Well, hello everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is Harry Brelsford. I'm the founder of SMB Nation. We are back for another one of our weekly webinars, always educational, always content rich, and we always appreciate your attendance. And I'll tell you why. I say it every week, but if I don't say it, then it goes unsaid, and that is we know you're busy. Just this last week, I had the opportunity, I'm working on a photo essay, and I'm visiting computer shops and computer stores, even some of the good old-fashioned computer stores we all know out on the street corners. And I went to about 15 stores in the Puget Sound area, and it was refreshing because you're working hard, and quite frankly, you're surviving, and several of you are thriving. And so it was just good to see the working man and the working lady doing the work of the tech sector and getting it done. So for us to get an hour of your time this week and every week is greatly appreciated, because I know what that means. I know that we've taken you away potentially from an engagement, and you've invested in us to better yourself. And as always, we want to be held to that high standard. So today's again, a very popular topic. It seems like one of the conversations of the day is very much regarding the backup, disaster recovery area, storage, etc. So we kind of continue down that line that we've been on for in recent times. Today we have a new friend of the family, Veeam. I want you to welcome them with open arms. We're talking to a gentleman named Chris Henley from the Salt Lake City area. And before we got on the air, I was just commenting, what a great town. I mean, the airport is centrally located. Park City's about 30 minutes away. Has a great tech sector. So, sir, I'll hand over to you, Chris. Maybe you can introduce yourself, your company. Let's get going. I'm excited.
Sure.
And I'm going to bug you with questions as we go along. Chris, one more thing, folks. Sorry, Chris.
No, that's okay.
Use the chat feature, folks. Use the chat feature. Heather's over in the control room, and she's going to pass those along to me, and I'm going to annoy Chris at different points and ask your questions. So, Chris, there you go.
Beautiful. I'm really glad you said that, actually, because that's the first thing I generally say. Don't love monologues. I'd much rather do a dialogue, and for some reason when we start talking about modern data protection and we start talking virtualization, those topics really demand a back and forth dialogue. So I'll throw out a whole bunch of topics today of interest. I'll review some things that are probably going to be ho-hum to you. You'll have heard them before, and I'll probably throw out some things that may be considered new and innovative to you, and maybe you haven't heard of them before. If you're interested in learning more, or you have questions about what we're talking about, do just as Harry suggested. Type those in the question-answer pane, and we'll get to questions. Please don't wait till the end of the session. If you have the questions, ask them. The chances are really high. If you want to know, everybody else probably wants to know the same thing too. From an introductory perspective, my history in technology starts in the late 80s and early 90s. At that point, I had just come out of college and started messing around with the career that got me through college. I initially thought I wanted to be a physician. Went through, actually got a degree in business. And the entire time I was in college, I was working on a consulting bench doing all kinds of crazy stuff associated with network installations, wiring, cabling, operating system installations for servers, general stuff that you would expect to find any new guy on the totem pole doing in the world of technology. And I found out pretty fast that there was a really high demand for that. Money was good, and I loved it. And the rest is kind of history. My focus stayed on the Microsoft family. At the time that I started in technology, there was really, really a heavy focus on other products besides Microsoft's network operating system. Windows NT really wasn't around yet. It hadn't stepped into the position that it is now in the marketplace. Novell really pretty much owned that space, and Microsoft was really, really new. I wanted to differentiate my skill set, and so I said, hey, I'm going to focus on Microsoft, which turned out to be a very prescient move, kind of a little bit lucky on my part, I guess, and I spent the next 24 years working on Microsoft technologies. A little over a year ago, this gentleman named Doug Hazelman, I'd known Doug for a little while, Doug does work with a company named Veeam Software. He approached me. I was working at Microsoft at the time, working in their IT evangelism section, doing a lot of stuff around Windows Server because that's where my passion really lies. And he said, hey, we need somebody to help evangelize our backup and replication tool set for Hyper-V. And I said, well, you've come to the right place because I love Hyper-V. What's the quality of the tool set like? And I kind of already knew because I had followed Veeam and I watched them as they innovated and changed the way that we think about this space. And he said, it really comes down to three things: powerful, easy to use, and affordable. It's what every business wants. And I started looking at it, and a year later, I love the work that I do. So we're going to spend time today. We're going to talk about something called modern data protection. And we're going to focus specifically on Veeam's backup and replication tool. I want to walk you through some things from a very high-level conceptual perspective so that when we get to the technical detail, you'll have an understanding of why we do the things that we do. Now, our goal is to help our customers modernize their data protection. You would think that that goal would be fairly simple and easy to understand, but it's probably the #1 question that I hear from our customers and even from the industry at large. So what exactly does Veeam do? Well, we provide modernized data protection. Our customers range from the very, very small businesses to the very, very large. I threw in some names that you might recognize. At the present time, we call just over 63,000 customers our backup and replication customers, and we're protecting somewhere around 8 million virtual machines at present. Now, we focus heavily on the virtualization space. In fact, heavily is the wrong term. We focus only on the virtualization space. Let's show you an example. There's a customer that we work with called Catalent Technologies. Catalent had some challenges. They had 20 different sites worldwide. They were getting constant user and administrator errors. They were suffering some fairly major disasters. At one point, they had 2 major disasters occur 1 week after the next. 2 weeks in a row, 2 major disasters, and they really wanted to find a way to help themselves with this backup and replication challenge. Results: they wanted quick recovery from their everyday disasters. They wanted business continuity after a major disaster. Now, those two things are actually very, very different. And traditionally speaking, we don't treat them differently because the focus that we've had in the past was all on the physical disk, and the partitions that made up the physical disk were the things that we backed up. Well, because of that, our focus in the past when we used backup tools was all about straight-up recovery. Business continuity we kind of got because of recovery. Well, they wanted the two to be treated separately. Here's the Catalent challenges. They had a major fire, and of course they were affected by a significant tidal surge in the country of Japan. Both major impacts in their business. So one of their gentlemen had attended VMWare in 2012 in Europe, and he had seen a demonstration of Veeam's backup and replication technologies. He said, hey, we'd like to implement that. We'd like to see if it can actually meet the needs that we have for everyday disasters. And in fact, it did. And in fact, the gentleman you can see on the screen, his name is David Clark, actually wrote a nice little piece about how they had used Veeam at Catalent, and they ended up winning Best of VMware Europe 2012 for their case study on Best Virtualization Disaster Recovery Project. Kind of a cool thing. Now, in your environment, I'm assuming you've got 4 of the same problems that just about every business has. Backups take a long time. Recovery takes a long time too. In fact, generally recovery takes longer than backups do. Spending is out of control, and we're missing opportunities to use the resources that we already have because we're so focused on let's get it done. Let's make sure it doesn't cost too much. So when we talk about data protection challenges, I look at the things that I think are actually challenged or a specific challenge to the business. Now, if I'm in a small business environment, I probably don't have a huge staff that's going to come in and take care of my backups for me. And I also probably don't have a huge amount of time to focus on making sure that the backups and the ability to restore is baked into my environment. I've got a fairly small window, not just the time it takes to do the backups, but I've got a lot of different responsibilities. I have to make sure that when it comes to backup, I can take care of all of my responsibilities and do it in a simple, easy way that lets me sleep at night. Now, let's chat solution here. So we're using virtualization. We use either VMware vSphere or Microsoft's Hyper-V, and then we add Veeam to that solution, and now our backup and replication functionality for that virtual environment can be taken care of simply in a cost-effective manner, very affordable, and in some cases even free. We'll talk about that here in just a second. The solution, virtualization plus Veeam, really is the ideal solution for backing up and restoring and replicating the virtual machines inside of your network environment. Let's stop and take a quick pause here, because generally when I throw out something like you may even be able to do that for free, the questions start pouring in. There are actually a couple of different versions of Veeam Backup and Replication. You can get the for-cost version. You can also get the free edition. Now, the free edition will allow you to back up virtual machines just like the full version does. It simply does not contain the ability to schedule those. So you don't schedule multi-virtual machine jobs. There's no calendar that you're putting items on. The free version, you're simply going to do that in an ad hoc format. Now, what's really cool about Veeam's Backup and Replication tool is that you can back up virtual machines while they're running. So if you were to try another legacy backup solution or the free backup tools that come with your server solution, generally speaking, you're going to end up stopping the virtual machines or pausing the virtual machines in order to get the backup to complete. Not here. In our case, now we do the backup while the virtual machine is up and running. We assume that the workload that you have running needs to stay running. If it's an Exchange server, heaven forbid, we don't want to shut down email so we can get a backup. We don't want to stop SQL so that we can get a backup. In fact, we really don't want to stop any of our functioning workloads so we can get a backup. And so with Veeam's Backup and Replication tool, we don't. We do the backups while the virtual machines are running. Now, Catalent, we use them as our example. Their traditional backup system, we call it the legacy backup system because that's a nice way of saying their old system that didn't work, used to take them about 24 hours to complete the total backup of the virtual machines in their different sites. With Veeam, it takes them about an hour. It's a 95% reduction. The question in the back of all of your minds is, how is that happening? Well, it's happening because Veeam innovated the way we think about backups. In fact, not only did we innovate the way we think about them, we innovated the way that they're actually accomplished. We started using some things like change block tracking mechanisms to monitor existing operating workloads, operating systems, virtual machines, applications. And so when it came time to do the backup, we already knew what the backup needed to contain. In fact, it was already written to something called a CTP file. We just had to write it to disk. And so the time necessary to make a backup drops dramatically. We also do some cool things around saving space, compression, deduplication, things like that, so that not only does the backup complete quicker, but it actually takes up less space on your disk. We throw in a couple of added, oh, go, Harry, he's got a question. I knew it would come.
Yep, I do have a question. So it's actually my own question, but folks, I want to encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions. This strikes me as almost a conversation about better math, and let me give you the context of it. About a month ago, we had a webinar that was a little bit different for us, dealing in a political realm about supporting STEM education, science, technology, engineering, math. And, you know, it's one of those evergreen, I mean, who's against education? You know, no one's against education, so it's a pretty friendly webinar. But the point is, and as I try and do the best I can with my 2 teenage boys every day, the point is this seems like a real-world example of somewhere, somehow, you have a better algorithm. You have better math. Am I off base on that? That's kind of my question is, how the heck are you doing this, dude?
You know, it's the question I hear every single day. In fact, every time this slide goes up on the screen, I hear the questions pour in, and they're just that. And I'll actually go even one better. The point is not doing the math better, because you know, all of our competitors are out there saying,
don't
I don't
tell my
get it.
staff that. don't tell my kid that. And I still want them to major in math, but go on.
Well, I'll give you a fun example. So I'm a huge fan of TED Talks, right? So
yeah.
there's a great TED Talk out there that talks about harvesting bone marrow. If you haven't watched it, you have to go and see it. It is one of the best technology speeches I think I've ever seen. It's short, it's 5 minutes in length. But the gentleman there talks about the fact that to harvest bone marrow, the way we've done it for the past 30 years, was with a straight, non-flexible needle, and you poke it into a person's hip socket or hip, poke it straight in, suck out a little marrow. Pull it out, poke it in, suck out a little marrow. Pull it out, poke it in, suck out a little marrow. And, you know, it made bone marrow transplant donors pretty darn uncomfortable, right? Well, this gentleman said, hey, what if instead of using a straight, non-flexible needle, what if we used a long, flexible needle and we contoured it to the shape of a person's iliac crest, the top of their hip? Then we could poke them once, run it all the way along the top of the hip and gather all that bone marrow and effectively gather 95% more marrow in one stick and cause the person 95% less pain. Wow, what an interesting idea. So very much like that, Veeam comes along and says, look, the focus on physical disk is what takes the time. Instead of focusing on the underlying physical disk structure, which really frankly doesn't matter, we're going to back up all the different disk types anyway. Why would we care which partition we're getting? Why not back up the workload? If we focus on the virtual machine, the operating system, and the applications, I can monitor those constantly. I don't have to wait for some predated point in time, then go check the content of the disk, compare it to my previous backup, and then make a decision about what should be written and what should stay. That should all be done ahead of time. And so it isn't just better math. We do use some really cool mathematics in this, no question about that. But because we changed the way in which the backup is going to be constructed, the time that it would normally take to do all of this ugly work of comparing originals to existing and then writing, you know, out the new block changes to a file and then writing that file to disk is now just write the file to disk, because all of that other stuff takes place on the front end. Now, what we've effectively done, I guess, is really said, you know what, backup is not something that occurs at a point in time. The write to disk occurs at a point in time, but business continuity occurs all the time. And that's really where we start to change things. And by doing that, not only does it reduce the time that it takes to make the backups, it also reduces the overhead that's going to be placed on the virtual machines. So it's really a good question. While the while the changes that are occurring in the operating system world are incredibly important, it's also important that the tools that we're using follow those changes. Now, I told you earlier when we first started, and this may be something that kind of helps along this line. When we think about backup and replication, in the old days we used to think about how long does it take to back up and how long does it take to recover. And backup and recovery were the discussion. Well, if you wanted to talk business continuity, like how is my business going to survive in the case of a tsunami or a large fire or an earthquake or some other natural disaster, how does business continuity work? In the old days, it was all about backup. I remember having a conversation with a gentleman who happened to have a business in the World Trade Centers. And when that disaster occurred, he said to me, oh, we're so thrilled, we had a backup of everything. And I smiled, and he said, we were able to get the whole business back up and running in 4 days. Well, that's not business continuity. That's disaster recovery. What we want is, imagine a conversation where we say, hey, my business in Japan suffered because of an earthquake and then a follow-up tsunami. We have no operations there. However, it had zero impact on our business because our recovery point and our recovery time objectives all were met, and we had failover to our other sites. That's business continuity. I want my business to run under all circumstances. So it's back up every VM every day and it's actually something more. So when we talk about backup and replication, and that's why we put those two pieces together, the tool does backup and restore amazingly well. About 95% better than any of our physical competitors. And then we throw the replication piece in because you want business continuity. The ability to have a replicated virtual machine in another environment, on another host, in another geographic location that's ready to go at a moment's notice provides me business continuity. There's this ugly cycle that occurs in virtual and physical environments. We all want to have 24/7 operations. So because we want 24/7 operations, we have a limited time when we can actually complete a backup. If your backup window extends beyond 24 hours, for example, we'd say that functionally it's not going to work. It's going to be functionally non-functional, which is kind of a beautiful thing. My 8th grade English teacher would not love that. Data explosion, 30 to 50% annual growth, and that's more than realistic. In some cases, we see as high as 80% year-over-year growth on our data. So we're saving tons more stuff. And we can't lose that stuff. There's an increasing demand for recovery. And not only an increasing demand, but there's an increasing demand for the speed of recovery. Users call our help desk and they want an email with an attachment. They want it back as soon as possible. They want it back while they're on the phone. They don't want it back sometime in the next 24 hours. So we put those three pieces together, and it becomes very challenging for a backup and replication architecture to meet that cyclical need. Let's chat recovery for a second. Recovery takes way too long. And when we say that, here's Catalent again. We're going to use them. If Catalent wants to be able to recover an entire site in the event of disaster, say their fire disaster, it took them about a week, a little over 7 days, to use their legacy backup solution. With Veeam, it takes them a couple of hours. How is that possible and why? Well, it's possible for a couple of reasons. Again, we lost the focus on the physical disk, so the underlying physical disk infrastructure is not a problem. You put the physical disk in place, we don't care what it is, and then we're going to add the virtualization infrastructure. Generally speaking, most businesses will have a pre-provisioned host machine. They'll lay that on top of their hardware, and at that point, we'll add the virtual machines back to the host, and we'll have that environment up and running in a few hours. Now, it's technically possible in cases of where you've done a lot of pre-prep work. It's technically possible to recover virtual machines in about 2 minutes. Now, we generally don't say you can have everything back online and running in 2 minutes because most individuals don't have the time or the resources to kind of preset that recovery environment. Now, could you do rapid recovery of a virtual machine called instant VM recovery and have it take place in 2 minutes in your environment? Yes. When it comes to an entire site, it's going to be a little harder. You'll have to do a little bit more prep work. The benefits are seemingly obvious. Harry, questions? I know you're thinking of one.
Just another wisecrack. Just another wisecrack. But sir, there you go again. Now a time for a commercial to send your kids to fine academic institutions. Science, technology, engineering, and math, and support Senate Bill 101 for SIP funding. So, by the way, you hear my Springer Spaniel in the background. We're pretty easy going up here on Bainbridge Island. So
that's pretty cool.
That dog noise, but seriously, Chris, this is cool. I mean, people are wondering, do we have a competitive advantage? Why do we do what we do? These are real examples that shows what at one point was research being practical application. I mean, seriously.
Yep. It is. It really is.
Folks, ask questions on chat. I'm a little bit light in the queue. Please ask your questions. Chris, please continue.
Yep, no problem. So on a VM failure, legacy backup systems take them about 12 hours to run their recovery for a virtual machine, 20 minutes with Veeam. We can actually get it down to 2. It's called Instant VM Recovery. With Instant VM Recovery, you can actually load your virtual machine from its backup file. So instead of doing the restore process that we're all used to, you can do the restore process. It'll take you a good 20 minutes to get that in, get your machine up and running. Let's say you're in an emergency situation. I need that workload up fast as possible. Well, why not recover it from its backup file? we're all familiar with the technology. It's been in place for years now of mounting an archive and then operating from the mounted archive. We do it with DVDs all the time. Why can't we do it with a backup file for an operating system on a virtual machine? The answer is we can. It's called Instant VM Recovery, and it takes about 2 minutes. So Forrester tells us that there is some significant cost associated with downtime, Information Week, Phenomenon Institute, Changing Minds. I'll get some good, nice quotes there. We lose an awful lot in technology because of downtime. No question about it, right? RTO allows us to reduce downtime. RTO, recovery time objective, that's the goal for us, to limit the amount of downtime in our organization. Let's talk about how this all works. Harry's already posed the question. You guys are all thinking the question. How do we actually do this? Well, the first thing is we build our tools for the virtualization space. Now, if I go out and I look at a technology infrastructure today, I have a couple of options. I can build the old client-server design of the past, where I'm going to go buy hardware, I'm going to buy servers, I'm going to host my workloads on those servers, and I'm going to pay an awful lot of money to do that. Or I can buy a server, I can run virtualized hosts, and I can use virtualization to maximize capacity of my machines. I'm going to pay for that too. The key, I guess, and the most important thing, is that if I choose to pay for a virtualization infrastructure, my ability to scale is much, much broader. It's easy to scale virtualization infrastructures out to very large environments, grow a business very rapidly from tiny to enormous, and do so at a very cost-effective clip. Now, when we choose virtualization, and I took business, I told you I have a degree in business. Business is important to me. I realize that technology is based in the way that we run our business. And the major reason that we see most businesses now moving to virtualization is because of the way that the expenses are allocated. Meaning, in a virtualized style environment, I find a much more operating expense-based model, meaning I pay for it as I use it. With the old client-server model, the old physical one server, one set of hardware model, I'm very capital expenditure, meaning I have to lay out capital up front, capital expense, and then try and recover that over time, which is not nearly as effective a model, especially when we start talking about a small business. We've got a couple of things that really kind of drive our particular part of the business, Veeam's part. The first one is that physical backups just don't work with virtual environments. We have fewer spare resources available for backup. The backups don't back up the entire virtual machine. Generally, they require the agent for the backup solution to be installed in every virtual machine. The physical backup solutions of the past just don't work for virtual environments. Now, all of those providers will tell you, oh, here's our document, here's how it works. Read these 500 pages, install these agents, buy these licenses, and see it all works. The challenge is you don't want to read the 500 pages, you shouldn't buy the licenses, and you don't need to install the agents. That's simply being done as a Band-Aid solution to help the old products that backed up physical disks now work in virtual ones, and they just don't. You'll try it and you'll find out what all of our customers eventually come to us and say. The legacy tools still require agents in the virtual machines. Because of that, you get extra cost to license them. You get extra complexity. You now troubleshoot and resolve the conflicts on the virtual machines, and you have to do the administrative overhead. And then, of course, you have some degree of risk. Unfortunately, the old backup systems of the past that were focused on backing up partitions do not understand virtual machines. So they won't back up your VHDX if you're running Hyper-V, for example, as well as its binary files, configuration files, snapshots, etc. It'll just pick up the one VHDX file, and then you're kind of on your own. And generally speaking, they'll recommend you shut the machine down while you do it. So we just hate that. Retrofitting doesn't work. If you try and retrofit an old solution to meet a new paradigm, it just isn't going to happen. You can see the quote here from Search Server Virtualization. If you use the same product for both physical and virtual server backup, we all know virtualization requires a fundamentally different approach. And yet, for some reason, when it comes to our backup solutions and our recovery solutions, we take the same approach that we took with our physical boxes. It's time to change that. I hope I'm not sounding too much like a preacher. That's not my goal. I'm assuming that all of you have had the experience and that this comes as a nice wake-up, and you start to say, well, yeah, of course. Why would I take the same solution that I used in a physical environment and apply it to a virtual one? Because they just aren't the same. Let's talk about Veeam Solution. Veeam uses an agentless solution for backup and replication. And by agentless, here's what I mean. Your virtual machines, whether they're VMware or Hyper-V based, should not have any agent installed on them. None. Now, in order to get this to work, you're probably scratching your head and saying, okay, so who's going to manage the backup and the replication for all the virtual machines? Well, my question to you is, who's responsible for managing the virtual machines now? And your answer is going to be, well, it's the underlying hypervisor. It's either VMware's ESX or vSphere, or it's Microsoft's Hyper-V. And my answer then is, why don't we give the drivers and services necessary to do backup over to VMware vSphere and ESX, or to Hyper-V? And that's exactly what we end up doing. Because of that, we'll actually end up, and have done this for the past 5 years now, we end up working directly with VMware and directly with Microsoft to develop innovative solutions that work with their hypervisors. So as you're working with a VMware host, one of the reasons that we're so much faster than our competition and so much better in terms of capability is not because we tried to innovate outside the VMware infrastructure or outside the Microsoft infrastructure. It's because we innovated with them. We have deep VMware and Hyper-V expertise. We've won some amazing awards, and we've given just some really flattering accolades from both VMware and from Microsoft. We've won Best Product at VMworld several years running. We've this last year been given the Microsoft Partner of the Year for Management and Virtualization. I hope that's because of our work directly with them. It's not just because we have cool tools, but because we actually work with those software developers, and we develop innovations that make their tools even better. Virtualization-powered data protection is the future of backup and replication. Dave Russell from Gartner says, by 2016, 1/3 of organizations will change backup vendors due to frustrations over cost, complexity, or capability. We firmly see that, and in fact, we're seeing it happen even faster than 1/3 of organizations. If you're running into problems with one of those 3 C's, the cost, complexity, or capabilities, let me throw some ideas at you. I told you that the reason I came to Veeam is because of these 3 concepts: powerful, easy to use, and affordable. Now, when I started with Veeam, the backup and replication solution took about 10 minutes to install. That included the installation of SQL Express as a back-end database to help manage the backup and replication jobs. So 10 minutes. I was pretty impressed at the time. When it's so easy to use, you make your backup by going to the virtual machine, right-clicking and saying, back it up to this location, and then hitting OK. That's really the directions. From an affordable perspective, it's been almost a year now, Veeam announced something called Veeam Backup Free Edition. It doesn't get any more affordable than that. Now, if you're in a small business environment, which all of you are, right? SMB Nation. If you're in a small business environment and you're looking for a powerful solution to back up virtual machines, it doesn't get better than free, and it doesn't get more powerful than back up my running virtual machine, save it to disk, and allow me to recover it instantly at a moment's notice. It's why I came to Veeam. Now, some interesting stuff. Around powerful, I've talked to you today about instant VM recovery. Let me throw you some other interesting stuff that's going on in the world of Veeam Backup and Replication. We use this stuff called Sure Backup. Now, Sure Backup actually takes what you know about validating the consistency of your backup file to an entirely new level. Many of you run backup solutions where you make tape archives and send them off-site, or maybe you just take them home with you. You lay in bed at night like I do, and you wonder, I wonder if the data on that tape would actually work if I were to try and recover it. Well, with Sure Backup, we don't let you wonder. Instead, you build a little sandbox environment, and when your backup is completed, you actually test it and make sure that it's operational. That way you don't lay in bed and go, I wonder if that would actually work if we had to recover it. You'll know. You'll know right off. We use something called Universal Application Item Recovery, UAIR. Imagine being able to recover individual Active Directory user accounts. Interesting concept. Or items from, say, a table in a SQL database. Those kinds of things are important to us, and you'll notice that we're getting down to the application layer here. We don't care that you can recover the whole virtual machine. While that's good, oftentimes our users don't destroy a virtual machine. What they do is delete a file, and they want that back, and they don't want to restore an entire virtual machine to do it. And so we break down the virtual machine and the operating system and the application to its component pieces and allow you to recover individual items. So let me throw you a fun example.
Chris,
oh, Harry.
Yeah, if you don't mind, couple of observations. One I kind of wrote on a yellow sticky, and it maybe fits with your third point down, but I'll just insert it right now. Since we're dealing with SMBs and we're talking about the cost per hour of downtime, I did a quick and dirty calculation for us. Now, we don't release financial information except to my banker when my commercial line of credit comes up for renewal.
Right.
We're privately held, but suffice it to say, I am comfortable saying that if you kind of took a reasonable number of hours per year that, you know, a company would be open, the doors are open, and for us, it's probably somewhere plus or minus right around $5,000 an hour. I just wanted to share. You know, you take annual revenue, you take a reasonable number of hours we're open. So of course we're open 40 hours a year. I mean, but do the simple math. I understand your previous slide having a larger number, and that would be absolutely true for a larger company. But for some of the people on the phone, they can probably relate to anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 an hour of the true cost of downtime. So I wanted to,
painful, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's real money for a small business. We have Larry Doyle from Dublin, Ireland, sir.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, that means we pulled him out of the pub because...
yes, it's late in the evening for them over in Ireland. They're, what, 8 hours ahead of us?
He's GMT -0, and we're -7 this time of year out on the West Coast, -6. So, Larry, appreciate you putting down your pint and asking the following question. When will Hyper-V have the same features of Veeam for VMware? I don't understand the question. Chris, do you understand the question?
I do indeed. Now, I assume that he's been kind of following Veeam a little bit, and he knows that we are on process of making product announcements. We've been talking about our new version 7 of our backup and replication software that will come out sometime in the next couple of months here. Now, we've made some fairly significant announcements about changes to that platform. And you'll notice also that many of those provide feature parity to what we find on the VMware side of the house. Now, I want to be as clear as I can possibly be here, both from an understanding perspective so that the question gets answered and from a technical perspective. One of the big challenges that we run into in building feature parity between the two products is that the two products are not built the same. So the underlying architecture in a VMware environment is really kind of a monolithic hypervisor design, where in Microsoft's Hyper-V, they use what's called a microkernelized design. And because of that, some of the things that we can do, I mean, literally first release for Hyper-V actually exceed what we could do in VMware. And by the same token, some of the things that we could do in VMware, like the Universal Application Item Recovery, for example, and the Sure Backup, actually took us some time to develop for the Hyper-V environment. Now, to answer the question, yes, we're going to see great feature parity in this release of Veeam Backup and Replication version 7 coming up here in the next couple of months. Now, what I'll recommend to you, watch the Veeam blog. On a weekly basis, we announce new features and feature sets that are upcoming. You'll already note that some of those add feature parity to what we see or even extend feature capability on the Hyper-V side beyond what we have on the VMware side. Again, design of the platform is something that our developers work with Microsoft and with VMware on, and we're seeing that same maturity on the Hyper-V side. So super question. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me just check the queue. Heather's, we do have another.
Cool.
Nancy Williams from the Seattle area. So, will one of the V-Power workshops be held in Seattle? Well, that makes sense, Nancy.
Nancy, I don't know the answer to that question yet. My as good as I can do is I hope so, because I thoroughly enjoy coming there. If we can get it to happen like the second week of May, that would be even better. But as yet, I don't know. I haven't seen anything on it.
Build in an extra day. Sir, build in an extra day and stay over on Bainbridge Island. And
oh, that would be great. That would be great.
Okay, so please continue, sir. Folks, we're at about, we have about 16 minutes left. Please ask your questions. Please continue, sir.
Yeah, no problem. You know, we've talked about all of this business of capability, complexity, cost. I talked to you about, results around power, and we've seen all kinds of companies come back to us and say, hey, we love the power associated with, Veeam Backup and Replication. I can bring back, here's one, Flybe. They can restore their aircraft maintenance app in 2 minutes. It meets their recovery point objectives and their recovery time objectives. The thing that I love about this is that our customers stop talking about the time it took them to restore, and they start talking about how they get their business running faster, which is really what I think the whole idea of backup and replication operations really is focused on. In the old days, we had to think about that because we thought about losing physical disks and how fast could I get them back. Today, the focus isn't on losing physical disks, it's on losing time and data. So we change. From a complexity perspective, stuff I've already talked to you about, no agents in virtual machines, no complex job setup, automatic load balancing between workloads. We use what's called a distributed architecture, and this is actually really pretty cool. So you're running a small business, and I assume the assumption is that small business at some point is probably going to grow. Now, it might be, slow growth where you're adding a new virtual machine every 6 months, or it might be rapid growth where you're going to add new virtual machines, each month for the next year. Regardless of the growth, we're going to have you deploy Veeam's backup and replication using what's called a distributed architecture. What that really means is that you can deploy the backup and replication tool as a virtual machine. You can deploy a backup repository, the place where you're going to save all of your disks, in whatever disk you want. It could be a directly attached piece of storage. It might be an iSCSI device connected to your network. It might be some RAID set of disks, some other network storage type. You pick and choose. We don't define the storage for you. We'll simply provide the software that allows you to put those backups to whatever data repository you want. Now, the other thing that we're going to add is the option for you to use something called a backup proxy. Now, when you make a backup of a virtual machine, or of any machine for that matter, there's some processor and some memory that's actually taken up by the actual process of backup and replication. Now, you may not have extra resources on your virtualization host to host that CPU and memory time. If that's the case, it's going to affect your virtual machine, and we really don't want to affect their operating performance. And so you build what's called a backup proxy, and you use the processor and memory on that machine, and we put the workload on the proxy box instead of on the actual host. Now, you can run everything on a single host if you want, not a problem, or you can run in this nice distributed, repository, proxy, backup server architecture. The beauty is you pick and choose. You can add pieces as you see fit. So if you want multiple proxies, you can use them, and we'll balance the workload between them. We'll actually do that automatically. So we take away the complexity. We make it really easy for you to use. We see all kinds of stuff. Yellowwood says, reduce our administrative time by 90%. We save time and we eliminate risk. Now, how are you going to know if this works for you? I usually say, hey, look, try it in your lab. Build out a simple machine, even on a laptop. Throw on a couple of virtual machines and put the backup software on. Doesn't cost anything to do, and it's easy to see how the tools work. From a cost perspective, our reduction in total cost of ownership generally goes up to about 70%. Everyone asks, how do we license the software? Software is licensed on a per-socket basis, meaning the CPU sockets on the server where you are actually going to run the backup and replication tool. So if you're running this for Hyper-V and your Hyper-V server happens to be, I don't know, a Dell R710 box, got 2 processors, so you'd need 2 licenses. And all of our software is licensed that way. So we license it on a per-socket basis. Now, when we talk about affordable, because it's software licenses, you'll have software maintenance that goes with that, which will entitle you to things like upgrades to new versions. You already heard me talk about version 7. We constantly are innovating and upgrading our software. It's interesting how you start doing innovation and you realize very quickly, wow, there's lots of things that we'd like to do. And so we keep our development team very busy, and as a consequence, you see a new release of Veeam's backup and replication software less than every 12 months. So new versions are up and coming fairly frequently. Prairie South Schools said they saved $50,000 a year on their backup storage alone. Clayco said $25,000 on their array-based replication. I think the point is you're going to end up saving a significant amount of money. Harry, how's our question queue over there?
Oh, man, we got a bunch of them. They're coming fast. Hey, and guys, we got about a little over 10 minutes left. So, hey, my friend Mandy Rice is asking, how much is the backup compressed? She also asked, just so we can kind of do a twofer here, she also asked, is it the size of a VM or half or less? Actually, they're related. Mandy Rice out of LA.
So let me talk to you about virtual machines and how we'll structure them in terms of storage. That's a great question, Mandy. So we'll actually use a compression utility to do compression on each of the jobs that we build. So you're going to go in and you can say backup a virtual machine, and we're going to compress the stuff that's written to disk. And that's really important because there's a lot of stuff in a virtual machine that's actually empty. And so we almost always see compression rates at least 2.3 to 1. So you assume that you're going to see compression rates where the virtual machine comes in about half the size of its actual size on disk. Now that's what we expect to see. Now, there are some workloads where we see only 40% ratios. Some workloads do very, very well at compressing data already. So for example, I have a couple of customers who store large amounts of image files, and they're stored in formats that are already compressed. So if I'm storing, say, PNG files, PNG image files, already a compressed file format, or if I'm storing video files in an MPEG format, an MPEG-4 specifically, those are already pretty well compressed, and we don't see the same kind of compression ratios with those types of data structures that we see on a traditional operating system applications, straight file storage kind of virtual machine. But in brief, we expect to see something around 50%, and sometimes we actually see even greater ratios for compression. If disk is something that you're concerned with, I'd also point you to the use of disk deduplication, because we'll use both compression and deduplication mechanisms if you configure them, and that way you can actually save a significant amount of disk, like to the tune of 90% plus. That is not a mistake. So I did a nice little webinar. Windows Server 2012 has a built-in data deduplication in software. Doesn't care what drive set you're using underneath. You'll take an existing drive, enable Microsoft's deduplication. It's what's called volume-based, so it's looking at the individual volumes. And you can use that in conjunction with Veeam's deduplication, which is job-based. So we're looking at the actual virtual machines that we are backing up. Between the two, using those two deduplication capabilities in conjunction with one another, not uncommon for us to get 98% recovery. Yeah, huge. So if disk space is an issue and you're talking about a data archive, and I will encourage you, please don't do this for stuff that you want to recover quickly, because the rehydration process takes time, so it will certainly slow down your recovery. But if it's me and I have the opportunity, I'm going to probably take virtual machines, I'll make a backup of them, I'll keep that backup in my local repository for, say, I don't know, a couple of weeks. And then at that point, I'm going to say, you know what, that's going to a long-term archive, and I'm going to save that and use deduplication there. So I'm going to save myself a tremendous amount of disk space by doing that. And still have the option, of course, to recover, albeit not quite as fast as from my local data repository. Hopefully that answers the question. I hope I didn't give you too much more there. Mandy, it's a super question.
No, she's just a diamond. I know Mandy, and she's fantastic. We have Colin Dixon. He doesn't say where he's from, so you know what? I'm going to exaggerate and say he's coming to us from Australia. I don't know that, but it sounded good. Colin asked the following: will the Hyper-V Hyper-V UR and Sure Backup work with Server 2008 Hyper-V, 2008 R2 Hyper-V, or Server 2012 Hyper-V? That's from Colin. What's your answer, sir?
Colin, that's a super question, and it's an answer that I don't have for you. In fact, to my knowledge, there hasn't even been an announcement of UR for Hyper-V yet. I'm making an assumption here. When you work with backup and replication from Veeam today, we support all of the versions of Hyper-V. It would not seem to be in our best interest, nor has Veeam ever done this, where we've gone and simply dropped an edition of the hypervisor in support of only the new editions. The opposite is true. In fact, when you go and you start looking at backup and replication, we provide support at present all the way back to version 3 of VMware. And frankly speaking, we don't go further than that because that's when our business began. So, yeah, we go 3, 4, 5 on VMware, and 2008 R2, and 2012 on Hyper-V side. So, yeah, our anticipation is you wouldn't see feature sets introduced for us unless they were something that, say, didn't exist in 2008 or 2008 R2. So, beyond that, yeah, absolutely. And Colin's going to watch for that new announcement.
Okay, we have Greg Barisic. Greg Barisic, destination unknown, is asking, is licensing per socket or per installed processor? Hey, I even understand the question. What's the answer?
Look at that. It's per socket. Yeah, all of the licensing that we do is per socket.
Okay, great. Well, Chris, we got about 5 minutes left. If that helps your timing, the question queue is clear, folks. Line them up for the end of the webinar. Let's rock.
Well, we're just about to the end of the slides, too, which is really, really good. I told you at the top of the session, we've got a little over 8 million virtual machines that we currently protect, and customers from the smallest of small business all the way up to the largest of enterprise-style business. We see now a little over 62,000 customers. That was released on Tuesday of this week. So our customer base is consistently growing, and we're just thrilled about that as an option. If you did want to run a tool like this in the enterprise environment, let's say that you're a small business today, but you see huge growth potential in your future, not a problem. We scale very well. I told you about the distributed architecture. You simply add component pieces as you need them. Regardless of how complex your environment is, you're going to be thrilled with your Veeam Backup and Replication solution. How big can we go? Mazda uses our solution. They're about 80% virtualized today, 400 plus virtual machines. Same things that we find in every organization. My backups take too long. I need to make sure I can reliably back up SQL Server, DB2. The results, they love the product. Faster backup and restores, database consistency, all of the things that you would expect to find from your backup solution. I threw the slide up here because we generally talk about innovations, and I inevitably forget some. And I'm already looking at the slide, and I can already see at least one that I have forgotten. Actually, I can see two now that I have forgotten. How sad is that? So I told you that with the release of Veeam's version 6 product, 6.1, you can see it there at the top, we introduced a free edition. In conjunction with that, we added a tool called Veeam Zip. You can see it there in red. Veeam Zip will actually make a backup of a running virtual machine, compress it, deduplicate it, and put it on whatever storage you want, even if it's portable. It's a neat tool. We've also thrown in a neat tool called Veeam Explorer for Microsoft Exchange, where you could actually read, enumerate, and then recover individual items from within a backed up Exchange database. That's without the restore process. And that's a free tool. That's part of the free Veeam Backup Free Edition tool set. So download it, mess around with it, start using it, and have some fun. I told you we won a bunch of awards, and I'm flattered that we have. I hope that they're indicators that we're doing the right things from a development perspective and that we're doing the right things from a partner perspective. The analysts have said very nice things about us. Rachel Dines from Forrester Research talks about key considerations about deduplication, support, and then continuity. Our customers have said nice things about us. We love that they're happy with our products and the way that they're working in their environments. One thing that we hear over and over and over, and this is where I'd kind of like to end, Veeam Backup and Replication, it just works. You're going to have a great experience. You'll install it, configure it in minutes. You'll have your first backup done within a couple of hours. You'll sit back and say, why did I not do this before? That was too easy. I almost think I must have done something wrong. You haven't. It's the way the experience should work. Our competitors get on us a lot because they'll say, well, you only do virtual machines only, and that's true. I see that as one of our strong suits. We build our tools for virtualization. Our company's built around the idea that we are a modern data protection tool set. Our goal is not to do something better than the competitor of the past with physical disk. They do physical disk great. We do virtual machines, and we do it great. Our expectation, Gartner says we're about 60% virtualized, and the market's on its way to surpass 80%. As that happens, we want to find out what you say. Take a closer look. Modern data protection built for virtualization. The way that I would request that you do this, hit the Veeam website, veeam.com. As you go there, you'll find a couple of things. First, you can, of course, download Veeam Backup Free Edition. You can also download Veeam Backup and Replication full version as a trial. Use it for 30 days. You'll also notice one other thing. We're going to ask you for your email address and a name. As you download our products, all of Veeam's products, including the trial editions, are fully supported. So when you come in and you pull down a 30-day trial, we ask for your name and your email address because if you call into our help desk, we want to be able to pull up an account and work directly with you. Take some notes, keep track of our relationship, make sure that you get what you want out of our products. So please feel free, hop out, download the trial editions or download the free edition and start having some fun with Veeam in your environment. Harry, that's all I've got for you. Have you got some additional questions?
Yeah, we're going to take one more. We're at time, and as long-time attendees know, we respect people's time. So
sure.
Let's not be disrespectful now. We do have a question from Gavin Ross, destination unknown. Can you back up individual VHDX files as opposed to the entire VM?
Yes, you can back up individual VHDX files and exclude the rest if you want. It's a good question.
Oh, okay, great. Well, folks, a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to populate with any questions, they do show up in the report that we'll provide to Chris, and he can answer those offline. So you're welcome to do so very quickly, but we are at the end of the webinar. A little bit of housekeeping. Again, thank you so much for attending. Larry, have another pint of Guinness on me over there in Dublin. And don't forget, folks, we're just about a week away from the 7th Annual SMB Nation Spring Conference at Microsoft Redmond. featuring both business and technical conversations. And I want to make myself available. Call our main number that you'll see on the website. I'm at extension 103. If you have any questions or concerns about the conference, we'd love to see you there. It's a great year. And Chris, once again, sir, thank you very much. And you know what? I think you can still fit in a half day of skiing at Park City, a little bit of spring skiing. Have a run for me, man.
Sounds good. I will. Thanks again, Harry, and thanks to all of you guys.
All right. See you later. Thank you, folks. The webinar is now over. Bye-bye.